All right, welcome back to Hockey North. I'm your host, Karissa Donkin. Happy to have you here, and I'm joined once again, she's back. It's Hayley Salvian from The Athletic. Welcome back, Hayley.
Thanks. Wow. I missed you last week.
I missed you too. I was like, it feels like there's something missing. I have like a Hayley-shaped hole in my life, you know?
In your heart.
In my heart, yeah, like right here.
Yeah.
So we're counting down to the Milan Cortina Olympics. This week we're going to be recapping a difficult rivalry series for Canada. So we saw a sweep by the United States. We're going to be talking about what that means for the Olympic team, whose stock is up, whose stock is down, and we're going to show you our projected rosters. So Hayley and I have been working really hard on this. We've been going back and forth. You know, the smoke's been going between both of our heads as we've been thinking about this. So we're going to take you through our thoughts. There's some difficult decisions ahead for Troy Ryan and Gina Kingsbury and all of the staff with Team Canada. So we're going to put our GM hats on. But first of all, let's walk through the rivalry series. So we saw a sweep by the United States, Canada being outscored 24-7. Not the best moment, including a 10-4 loss that was actually the team's worst loss since 2012 at that World Championship. But Canada did win that World Championship. So what's your concern level here, Hayley? Like, if you had to rank it, 1 to 10, are we panicked? Are we not panicked? Are we somewhere in between? Have we completely disassociated after a 10-4 loss? Like, where are we at?
Yeah, I'm definitely more concerned than I was after the first leg of Rivalry Series. I think after those first games in November, it was easy to write it off as, well, they left veterans at home and the PWHL players have barely played. They left Anne-Renee Desbiens at home. Mash Meyer didn't play. Well, they got their veterans back. Their starting goalies played. And these were two of the worst losses of the entire series. So I think it's fair to be a little concerned. Those justifications do not land quite as well. PWHL has been in full swing for 3 weeks before this international break. Desbiens gave up 5 goals in the first game. Mashmeyer gave up 5 goals in that first game. They had a combined .655 save percentage in game 3, that 10-4 loss that you were talking about, Karissa. So just like really bad play in the net. The team didn't look good. There was a team meeting after game 3. So I think it's fair to be concerned. I think if I was going to put a number on it, it would be like a 7 though. Like, I'm not at a 10. I'm not freaking out. Like, rivalry series is an important part of the Olympic preparation process, but it's not always the most accurate barometer of Olympic results. Like, the pre-Olympic tournaments had been dominated by one team or the other for years. They were just called different things, right? Like, Canada was the team to beat in 98 and the Americans won. The Americans were much better in 2002 and Canada won. So we've seen stretches of dominance then leading to this underdog mentality that has really worked out well for one side or the other. Like, I think Canada was probably better in 2018 and lost to the Americans in Pyeongchang. So I think that the Canadians are going to put together a 2022 like Olympic tournament where they're breaking all these records? No. So is it concerning? Yes. Are the Americans the better team? Yes. I'm not writing Canada off from the Olympics either way. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. Yeah. I think
Are you following my long-winded answer?
I'm right there with you. I think I would agree. I'm somewhere around a 7 myself, I would say. I wasn't super, like you said, concerned after the first 2 because you didn't really get a sense of like, this isn't going to be your roster. Your top goaltenders aren't there. We didn't see an Emily Clark. We didn't see a Brianne Jenner. Like, there were just so many pieces missing. And then going into these 2 games, I think everybody expected maybe a different performance from Canada than what we saw. But at the end of the day, I think you have to look at it as 2 games. It's a clean slate going into the Olympics.
Totally.
And like you said, it doesn't really mean anything going into the Olympics. I do think, yes, the Americans are the favorite. The thing that I really saw with the Canadian team in those games is it just feels like they're disconnected. Like, they haven't figured out the right mix. So we're looking at the top line. Daryl Watts has tried on the left side of Marie-Philippe Poulin. We all had, I think, high hopes for that. Didn't really work out. The D pairings are all over the place. And some of that you can expect sort of as a product of you're figuring out those last spots in the roster. You want to give people a chance at different places. But I think it goes beyond that for Canada. Like, I don't think they figured out the right mix and the right chemistry. And I think the US has a much better sense of that. And that's what concerns me the most about the Canadian team heading into the Olympics. And the problem is there's no more runway left to figure that out. You're not going to have another opportunity to figure that out until, they go over to Italy, and they're going to be, I think, having a few days of time to practice before. But in terms of games, like, that's it. So that's the thing that concerns me for Canada heading into the Olympics.
I also think it's worth noting, whenever we have this conversation about the youth versus the veterans, the American roster was forced to think differently because of the dominance of Team Canada. Is the timing ending up being better for the Americans versus the Canadians? Sure, but the US was coming off of a world championship loss in Calgary, an Olympic loss, a huge Olympic loss in 2022 by the Canadians, another loss at World Championships in Denmark. So they had to think differently. Robileski comes in. They bring all these new players in. Janicki, Bilka, Heisey's back in. I think Murphy was cut in Denmark, but then came back for Brampton. Like, that look in Brampton where they ended up winning, that was out of necessity because they kept losing to Team Canada. Aaron Frankel is the number one goalie. They made all these changes because Canada was the dominant team. So, like, Canada got the benefit of the doubt. I think Canada was and is allowed to stick with their veterans who have been there and done that over the last decade. So I think that is just worth saying. I know it's easy to pile on the veterans, but also, like, there's no young players who are pushing them out, and we can talk about that during the roster discussion. The US does have a much better player pool to pull from. Name me a young player who should be on the Olympic team without a doubt over one of these veterans. Like, I'm sorry, but you can't. And also, Canada has done a lot more winning than the US over this last Olympic quad, which is what necessitated this change versus Canada sticking with their vets because they've been the ones who have been winning more times than not. Anyways. That's my rant.
I know. I think it's true. And I think it's easy to have a short memory, and you look at kind of what that core of veterans have accomplished, and they've seen lows and they've seen highs. And I think that matters as well. And to your point, Hayley, is there a 2002 or 2003? And I'm picking that age group in particular because you look at, who the US has in that age group. And then you look at Canada. Is there a player in that age group who should be here, who's not? And there isn't. No. And that's a whole other conversation about, why is that age group has maybe developed a little bit differently. And then we look at the draft that's coming next year, and I think we're really going to see the product of that then. So the next question, Hayley, that we have to talk about, because this has been a question I think we've had in the program for a long time, which is who is going to play on the left side beside Marie-Philippe Poulin. So we figured out the right side. Laura Stacey, Marie-Philippe Poulin have that fantastic chemistry. So the question is who's on the left side? And we've seen all kinds of different people there. We've seen Sarah Fillier. We've seen Jennifer Gardner. Most recently, we've seen Daryl Watts. And it seems like, unfortunately, that didn't really work out. We saw Emma Malte as well. My thought is the best that we've seen, I think, in the last 2 years is Jennifer Gardner. For whatever reason, we haven't seen Troy Ryan go back to that. I think it might be worth experimenting with again when we get to Italy.
Yeah, I think what gave Gardner the inside track to play with Poulin at World Championships is that there wasn't a big lead up, there wasn't a big training camp, and it was like, okay, they're working in Montreal, let's put them back together for Team Canada because we don't really have time to figure it out otherwise. And I think now that Gardner's in Vancouver, I think Canada's like, well, we don't have that instant chemistry to tap into, so let's see what else we can do. I think after the first two games where other options weren't working, I am a little puzzled at the reluctance to put her back there. Poulin and Gardner were number 1 and 2 in scoring at World Championships last year. Like, we know that it works. And we also know that when Gardner was taken off that line, she was with Malte and Kristen O'Neill, if memory serves correctly. She remained productive, which tells us she's not just there because she plays well with Poulin, even though that's a great, card to be able to throw down. And she also scored in the gold medal game. So she wasn't just cooking against lesser competition. So I think we saw enough from Gardner in Czechia to feel comfortable in her being on that top line. Sometimes I just wonder if Canada should, like, this might be spicy because obviously they're great together, but like put Laura Stacey back on the third line with Turnbull and Clark and maybe dip back into a Jenner or a Fillier or a Sarah Nurse top line. I know Sarah Nurse has been injured, but like the Jenner Nurse Poulin trio worked in 2022. I know we're 4 years further down the road, but I guess my whole point here is at the very least, we know that like when it comes to the Olympics, Canada does a pretty good job figuring it out, and they will throw whatever at the wall until something sticks.
But the question is, do you go with what you know worked in the past? I don't think that's a bad idea to start the tournament. And they open against Finland, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have a little bit of runway to kind of throw some things at the wall there. It's unfortunate to not have Nurse for this tournament because you kind of miss those last two games to have like a full sense of what your forward group could look like.
Yeah.
But, on the other side of that, I guess one advantage that Troy Ryan has being, the head coach of the Scepters, as you mentioned, is to try out, sort of a Watts, Malte, Spooner line, which, Troy talking before the season began was quite keen on moving Emma Malte to the middle and trying something like that. Of course, Daryl Watts was injured for a little bit, so it hasn't really had a whole lot of runway in Toronto, but that's something if you can get that clicking, why not bring that over to the Olympics? And we see that, on the men's side all the time. Sure. Because, with these short tournaments, something's working in the NHL, you can import it into, a tournament like the Olympics because you don't have time to play around too much.
There was no bigger Chris Kunitz 2010 stan than I.
Right. I mean, hey, could we, throwing out an idea.
Okay.
What's Abby Rock up to? Would Abby Rock ever play for the Canadian team?
You're just trying to make me look like a weirdo now.
I'm just throwing that out there,
Switch over the passport, put her on the top line left wing. There's my newest passion project.
We'll throw that out. Gina, if you're listening.
I was all in. Yeah, like Gina needs one more eligibility issue.
Yes.
Hey, while we're waiting on that Hannah Miller thing, what about Abby Rock? Hey, IHF, what do you guys think?
Can we just run that past you? Like, just, or if we can't have that one, can we have this one? Work out a deal of some sort. Okay, so let's go through the roster. So we already talked about, giving Jen Gardner a try on the top line. So we've got her penciled in on our top line. Second line, we've got Daryl Watts, Sarah Fillier, Julia Gosling. Mm-hmm. And I know we went back and forth, mostly about kind of the last 3 or 4 forward spots, and we ultimately decided to put Gosling there. I thought she's been an incredible player on the power play for Canada. I think we saw a little bit of that in Toronto last year as well. Canada only scored 3 power play goals at the Rivalry Series. She scored one of them and had the primary assist on the other. To me, she brings a lot of the same skills, physical attributes that we saw or that we see from a Natalie Spooner, but she's also got this incredible shot, which makes her a deadly threat on the power play.
But like Sarah Nurse could easily be on that second line, and Julia Gosling could be a great fourth line forward because she brings size and she's reliable, and that could be like a pretty gritty fourth line with Malte and Kristen O'Neill. There's just a lot of versatility there with someone like Julia Gosling, and to your point, Karissa, she has shown that she can be an asset on the power play, which needs to be better in Milan. It was 3 for 13 at Rivalry. That is not good enough.
Yeah. And then on the third line, we've got Emily Clark, Blair Turnbull, Brienne Jenner. So these are all people who've been here before. Brienne Jenner looking to go to her 4th Olympics. And I think something that, pretty much anybody who watched the penalty kill on Saturday night noticed is Emily Clark and Blair Turnbull were pretty much out there for the entire time. So it's easy to tell who Troy Ryan trusts. And this is a line that I think he would have a lot of trust in. And Brienne Jenner is someone who I think could move kind of up and down the lineup as well. But Turnbull and Clark, I think you'll see they're going to be a staple on the penalty kill. They've been a staple on the third line for a long time. I don't see that changing. And then we've got a fourth line of Emma Malte, Kristen O'Neill, Sarah Nurse. Again, Malte is someone I think who could kind of move up and down the lineup. We saw her on the first line on Saturday night. We've seen her down the middle with Toronto. So that is, somewhere you could put her if need be. Kristen O'Neill for me was one of the best players in the Rivalry Series. I think she fits that fourth line center role so well. She's super hard to play against. She's tough on the puck. You can play her on the penalty kill. We've seen her maybe struggle a little bit higher up, like kind of in a second line line center role in the PWHL. But on Team Canada, to me, she just fits like a glove here. She's somebody who knows her role. She's been in this role for a long time. I think it just makes sense. When we're talking about those last few cuts, I think Kristen O'Neill should be in Milan.
Yeah, I don't think she's done anything to make her way off. Like, I see her as a lock. To me, I think a lot of this roster, when we're looking at the forwards, are locks. It's just a matter of where they land. I think really the only debates that we had, Karissa, was at the bottom of the lineup. There is quite a bit of a logjam at the forward position at the bottom when we're looking at a Natalie Spooner, a Jen Gardner, even though we have her on the top line, but Troy Ryan and Gina Kingsbury have not played her there. The coaching staff, we should say, have not played her there. But I would say there's a fight between Gosling, Gardner, Hannah Miller, who we haven't talked about. Is she even eligible? Like, we don't know at this time. Danielle Serdachny, Natalie Spooner for two or three spots at the bottom of the lineup, or scaling the lineup. And like, to me, Kristen O'Neill is not a debate. She's a lock. She was not somebody that I considered taking off.
So Natalie Spooner, I think, there might be some people surprised to see that we have her as the 13th forward.
They shouldn't. That's where she's been playing, just respectfully.
I know, but I'm talking
Watch
about
the games. Look at the lineup. That's where she's been playing.
I know,
Karissa.
But I think some people, though, for sure, like, because we're talking about somebody who was the PWHL MVP a couple of seasons ago, people are, might have that reaction. But I do think she is somebody who has value to bring as a 13th forward, in the sense that, again, she's another one of those players who's seen it all. She's done it all. You can throw her on a power play and sort of plunk her in front of the net, as she always is in that spot. And and she brings that kind of, I think she brings something also to their locker room. Somebody like Caitlin Kramer, I can definitely see an argument for bringing her. But if you're going to bring her as the 13th forward, and you're talking about someone that you're going to kind of put in here and there, who kind of has more of that value, I think a Natalie Spooner could bring more.
For sure. And I also think we need to give Spooner like a bit of grace in the sense, like, she did tear her ACL and she hasn't played that many games this season. I think the sense is that she's been night and day this year versus her initial return from surgery last year. Like, she does look much better than she did in the 14 games she played for the Toronto Scepters last season. She's only played 4 games. She has 3 points in the PWHL in those 4. So I think the idea in my mind is that come Milan, Spooner will have more games under her belt. She'll have her feet and her legs back under her a little bit more by then. And if she's the 13th forward, that's not a bad place to be for Natalie Spooner or for Team Canada to have her there. And if she takes strides in the right direction, if she gets a little bit quicker, if she makes strides in that direction, then you have a really easy second line right winger, power forward, top power play unit player to scale the lineup. But I agree with you, Karissa. There's a lot to like about Caitlin Kramer's future in the program, and her future's very bright, but I don't see her making it over Spooner at this time.
Moving on to the defense. So I think a lot of the names here are, ones that people expected. In my mind, the top 4 positions on D were locks. So that's Ella Shelton, Renata Fast, Claire Thompson, and Erin Ambrose. So we went with Jocelyn LaRocque, Sophie Jakes, Chloe Primerano. So let's start with Jocelyn LaRocque. So, to me, she's someone who, again, has been there, has done it all. And I think based on where we saw her play during the Rivalry Series, she has Troy Ryan's trust. And Sophie Jakes is someone who, going back and forth when we were talking about whose stock is up Hailey, she's someone who had a great Rivalry Series. I think was a bright spot, if you can pick out a bright spot of that 10-4 loss. We know that she can run a power play. And I think before, my thoughts about Sophie Jakes were, well, if you're going to bring her and you're not going to put her on the power play, does she really...
Yeah, then what's the point?
Then what's the point? We saw her play a little bit on the PK on Saturday night too, which I think was an interesting move from the coaching staff.
Yeah, you know what? I think her productivity and offensive impact in the PWHL has made Sophie Jakes like undeniable for me. I don't know what else you're looking for her to be on the Olympic team. We can talk about her skating or her defensive side of the puck. She didn't really play in the gold medal game. Like those are legitimate reasons for concern. Like I think she did enough to be there. If she's not, I'm not totally sure what they're looking for.
Yeah, and she's won back-to-back Welter Cups too, which is something, to talk about. And then Chloe Primerano, I think it makes sense to take her as a seventh defender. I think that she is so skilled. She's so smart. It's obviously going to be it's going to be a big transition to be on a stage like that at 19 years old, which is how old she'll be when the Olympics start, the youngest player to be there since Marie-Philippe Poulin. Why not bring Chloe Primerano as your seventh defender? We've talked about her being the defender of the future. I think there's no doubt that she's skilled enough to be there. And then you've got a Jocelyn Larocque by your side to kind of help with that transition. Maybe she'll have some tips on Abby Murphy and, how to not let Abby Murphy take a one-timer from the exact same spot multiple times.
I don't know. Maybe just be there
thoughts.
Defensively, get a stick in the lane, don't let her backdoor, But also like that is being open. Like I know we can talk about how Canada needs to figure that out, but like being that open all of the time is a skill. Abby Murphy's very, very good at that.
She is. That is true. And then in goaltending, not much debate here. I don't think Anne-Renee Desbiens, Emmerich Mashmeyer, I don't think we're going to be getting any, Nobel prizes here for who we've picked as our starting goaltender and backup goaltender. It's not science, rocket science, as they say. So we did go with Kaylee Osborne as the third goaltender. I could honestly go either way here with Eve Gaston.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, the third goaltender is not going to play. I went with Kaylee Osborne because I think she has a bit more runway being the starter in the PWHL to kind of make that statement.
I would probably still go with Eve Gaston, but I also don't care.
They're not going to play unless somebody gets hurt. I mean,
I think Eve Gaston is probably the next generation Anne-Renee Desbiens. So if we're throwing in Chloe, I think we should probably throw in the future, the goalie of the future. But like you said, Kaylee Osborne's going to play more against the kind of competition they're going to face at the Olympics. So I think that's fair.
So we're talking about who's going to try and defend Canadian gold at the Olympics this February. Well, I had the chance to speak to someone who knows a thing or two about winning gold medals. She played in 5 Olympic hockey tournaments. She won 4 gold medals. No woman has scored more points in a Canadian jersey. It's Hayley Wickenheiser. Here's our chat. So we have a very special guest here on Hockey North today. Canadian Olympic legend, world champion, all the adjectives that you can think of. It's Hayley Wickenheiser. She's one of the greats. Thank you so much for joining us, Hayley.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So first of all, I know you wear a number of different hats, but I understand you're working on some youth hockey initiatives. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so this year, really proud and honored to be back with the Kruger Big Assist program, as you can see from my toque. It's an awesome program, and Kruger has really stepped up in a big way. What they're doing is minor hockey associations across Canada can nominate their minor hockey association to receive a grant for $25,000 with the ultimate prize of $100,000 done by voting. But for communities that are need to upgrade or add more inclusivity, accessibility features to their arenas or within their minor hockey association. So it's a great program trying to get more kids into hockey, more kids from diverse backgrounds, and it's open until February 22nd to nominate your minor hockey association.
The Olympics are back in Italy in February. Obviously, you have some pretty good memories in that country yourself. To me, when that Team Canada won gold in 2006, Hayley, that might be the best Team Canada we've seen on the women's hockey side. Can you tell me just what do you remember about that tournament and that gold medal?
Yeah, I do think you're right. I think that it probably is one of the best teams we've ever iced. Just some great players, a lot of depth. We really seem to dominate that Olympics. The Swedes upset the Americans in the semifinal, so to make it to the final, which was a great thing for women's hockey. You had the performance of Kim Martin, their goaltender, who really stood on her head against the U.S. to keep them into the gold. And then I just remember a dominating performance by our team, really right through the lineup in that gold medal final. I think it was 4-1. I can't even remember, but we rolled through it, and it was a very smooth lead up, and probably one of the best, most dominating performances by a Canadian team in the Olympics.
And for so many years, when you come back from the Olympics, women's hockey would, of course, have that boost. Everybody would be talking about it. We know tons of people were interested and were watching, but there wasn't always a clear way to kind of carry on that momentum in terms of knowing where the very best in the country would be playing after that. That seems to be changing with the PWHL. What do you think about that? And what kind of opportunity do you think this upcoming Olympics might be for women's hockey?
Yeah, well, we always relied on the Olympics every 4 years to boost the game, and we'd always see almost 100% growth in registrations from in the female side after the Olympics. So now you have that void in those 3 years in between with the PWHL, where kids can watch it on TV regularly, social media, all that stuff, and get to know the players, follow the players, not just the players that are playing in the Olympics, but now in that league, and something for them to strive for. There's only 20 players that play in the Olympics, but there's a lot more spots now for professional female hockey players to grow up and kids to dream that they want to be. So I think it's great. It continues to grow, and it's really buoying the female game in between the Olympics.
And one of those players who'll be playing at the Olympics, who you also played with, Marie-Philippe Poulin, one of the best to ever do it. What do you remember about a young Marie-Philippe Poulin, particularly at that first tournament as a teenager in 2010?
Yeah, well, as a young player in 2010, I remember being a young player myself and just having that excitement and the freedom to go out there, and you don't quite have the weight of the world on your shoulders at that time, but she scored, I think, 2 big goals in that game to help us win the game, and just a really impactful offensive player in her first Olympics in Canada. And I remember just being in that rink in Vancouver, the excitement that we all felt of looking into the stands, the Canadian fans, and just it's rare to get an Olympics in your home country as a Canadian athlete. So to have that experience was amazing, and that was the start of some great performances by her as well.
And to see what she's accomplished now, how does that feel, as her former teammate, and kind of where does she rank for you on the list of all-time greats?
Yeah, well, she's definitely up there on the list of all-time greats. I played with a lot of very good players through the years. One of my first line mates when I started on the national team was Angela James, one of the best to do it as well. And she didn't have as long of an opportunity in the game just because of where the female game was, but was sort of the first player that I was like, wow, that's a really good hockey player, looked up to. So, through the years, like, it's going to be interesting to see, with the professional women's league, more and more of these players come, and just how players' careers evolve and how long they last and all of that sort of thing, similar to what we see on the men's side. But I played with a lot of great players I could list for a while here, of the teammates that I've had through the years that have been awesome.
And on the men's hockey side, of course, we have NHLers going back to the Olympics this year. And the big question or talking point, I guess, we've had about Team Canada this week is where do some of these young players fit in, or do they fit into the Olympic roster? Players like Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini and Matthew Schaefer. And it feels kind of like a conversation we had about a young Sidney Crosby back in 2006. What's your perspective on that, Hayley, in terms of, how much youth you should bring to these tournaments? Do you go with veterans over young players, and how do you work new players in?
Yeah, I think you need a mix. I think it's an interesting tournament in that it's a short term. You don't have a 7-game series. You don't get a lot of time to gel as a team. So you need to have the right dynamic of not only on the ice, but off the ice, and how players feel, chemistry, all that kind of stuff. So I like to think, some veterans that have been there before, guys that have maybe been there once, and then some new players. So it seems like week to week as the NHL season goes along, those names, change. Everybody likes to speculate. But at the end of the day, it's kind of, you got to go a little bit with a hunch with the management staff. Look at Toronto. We've got John Tavares, who's playing unreal right now, as his name in contention. Then you look at Macklin and Bedard, the young guys that are coming up, and do they fit? And also, can you play a role? We know they have great offensive instincts, but can they play deeper in the lineup? And can they help your team win the game that you're going to have to play, probably against the Americans in that Olympics? Who knows? But if we saw the Four Nations as any indication, it's not just a track meet. It was a really tough game.
Well, you certainly have given us lots of great Olympic memories over the years. Thank you so much for that, Hayley. Lots of our viewers will have fond memories of watching you play over the years. So thank you for making some time to join us today.
Okay, thanks for having me, Karissa.
So speaking of greats, of course, we just heard from one of the greats there, Hayley Wickenheiser. Let's talk about some great moments from 2025. I feel like this year has gone on for a long time. I know, like, as people get older, which I certainly am, time goes faster, but I feel like in PWHL time, we've seen a lot of hockey in the last year. I think that's just me getting used to like how long PWHL seasons are now, which is awesome.
For sure.
So lots of
I was devastated to find that my pick for goal of the year was actually in 2024.
I know, right? It's that's unfortunate.
Everything's a blur.
Yeah. So since you couldn't pick the goal that you wanted to pick, Hayley, what did you decide on as your goal of the year?
So I will say, like, I wanted the Abby Barine goal where she deked around Renata Fast, the best defender on the planet, for a huge goal when she was playing for the Victoire. But yeah, that was in December. I was really upset when our producer Aaron mentioned that, so I had to go back to the drawing board. And it's okay because there was actually a lot of options. But I think this is actually turning into a bit now. I'm going with Abby Rock's Michigan goal.
Shocker!
It's crazy. I'm going with Abby Rock. The Michigan goal is the first Michigan goal scored in the PWHL. It was so clean. It was unbelievable. That just is typical Abby Rock. Like, if there was any player you would think would do that, it'd be her. She's got, the confidence to do it. She's got the skills to do it and the IQ to know this is the right moment. It was super clean and nobody's done it since.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the Michigan goal, it was a great goal to watch, but I also think it's great for the game. Like, I think it made all the, the big sports highlight shows, and which, women's hockey should be on there more often. We know how skilled it is. The rest of the world should know too. So I think that's huge for the game to have that moment. Kind of cool also to have, Abby Rock, Michigan girl, scoring in Michigan.
Oh, yes.
Which is kind of neat. But I went with the MPP superwoman goal that you mentioned earlier at the Takeover Tour in Vancouver last January. And I think obviously we all know about the lore of MPP in Vancouver, making the return to this city where she accomplished such great things at her first Olympics as a teenager, and now she'll get to play there more often because there's a team there. But I think that was just such a cool moment, and just one of the best player in the world, most skilled player in the world, smartest player in the world. And it was an example of that. Yeah. And then when we talk about the save of the year, so the one that I picked, Hayley, I had to go with Glenna Phillips. And I think there were a few different saves, that we could have picked from the playoff run that she had with the Ottawa Charge, of course, being named the playoff MVP. I voted for her as the playoff MVP. She was an obvious choice.
Interesting.
For me, the save that I picked was in Game 4, the clinching Game 4, of course, where Minnesota wins, but you just see Gwyneth Phillips standing on her head as per usual. She's the reason that the Ottawa Charge made it as far as they did in the playoffs. And she's just such a technically sound goalie, but also someone who can just turn it on, which I love.
Yeah, she's reason to believe that the Ottawa Charge were going to be okay this season. Like, she's too good for them to be too bad kind of situation. Yeah, she's great. But I'm going to go with Emryn Smashmeyer's double paddle save on Sarah Fillier last week. I guess it was December 6th, so 2 weeks ago now, right before the break. It was the Saturday CBC game. We had that. We were in studio, me, Andy Petrillo, and Soraya Tinker, and the save live looked incredible. Mashmeyer reaches around. Sarah Fillier is wide open on the doorstep, and she dives back and makes the paddle save. And you see that in real time, and it's unbelievable. Then you see the overhead view of that save, and it's even more stunning because she gets her stick on it twice to stop Fillier twice, pitches the shutout. She makes the best save of the year, in my opinion. And like that was just such a huge game and a huge moment for a player at a really critical time in the Olympic/women's hockey calendar. So for me, it's the Mashmeyer save.
Well, the year's not over yet, Hayley, so maybe we'll see another highlight reel save or goal that will, push those out of contention. We've got PWHL action coming back on Tuesday. And of course, we have PWHL action on CBC Sports this upcoming Saturday. Montreal at Vancouver, live from the Great Pacific Coliseum at 3 p.m. Eastern, so you won't want to miss that.